You guys are getting pretty good now with ArcGIS Pro, so I'm going to try to keep this relatively simple. I've actually done a lot of the processes already in preparation for this. You're going to start by adding data, and you're going to add the TIFF file that I provided to you, or that you have independently downloaded if you want to look at an area other than your study area. That's up to you, and I'm happy to help you with that. If you're looking at the Anchorage Tiff, you're going to end up looking at an image that looks something like this. This is what's going to come up. And as we've talked about before, this is height data. So the higher the elevation, the lighter the color is. This is a pretty large area. It would take a very long time to process it. So you're going to want to clip those data. Now, I have clipped the data previously using a clipper that I made just specifically of the UAA area. So there it is. That's the raster that I would clip. But I actually want to do a slightly larger area than that, because what you'll find with the processes that we're running, that if you just do a very small area, you're not going to get to see a lot of variation in elevation. And this is why some of you might want to do a project that's up in the mountains someplace, instead of doing it in your study area, which is completely understandable. You'll end up with a much sort of cooler product than you do if you do this. So I went ahead and I went to the catalog, and in my database, I have created a new clipper here. I created the same way I did before. I made a polygon, and then I've actually written that clipper by editing it and creating it as sort of a square that covers this area. So let me turn off that other clipper that I had, and I had the raster clipper. Then I went ahead and I did the analysis, and the first analysis was actually to clip the raster. So I used that clip raster function here, and under the clip raster function, I used the original digital surface module, that's the raster file, and then I used as the output extent the new raster clipper that I created. And then I made sure to click to use the input features for the clipping geometry so I could create a good clip. And then I ran it, and it runs pretty quickly. It should be easy to do. Since I've run it already, I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to turn on the Clipped Raster, and this is what it looks like. And one of the things you'll notice is that in the clipping process, it begins to accentuate the greater variation in elevation that you see in the smaller area. So that's a good thing. That means we're going to get to see neater things than we would otherwise. The next thing that you are assigned to do is to create a hillshade, and you do this with tools as well, and search in geoprocessing for hillshade. It's a Spatial Analyst tool, and this is very easy to run. You just make the input raster, that clip, and then you create some sort of an output raster. And you might want to completely rename it just to call it hillshade. It'll be a little bit easier for you to find it. And again, I have run this already, and so I put that on top of it, and here it is. You can see that hillshade, and you can really see how the height and elevation begin to show the topography of the area, which is, of course, what we want. And then the last thing that you're going to do for the first part of the assignment is you do these basic analyses that you are required to do. You can also do other stuff and play around with stuff if you want to, is to create contours. And so for the contours, go back to the tools, and you can go ahead and type in under this contours. And you're going to get a couple different options here. And what you should use will just be the Contour Spatial Analyst tool. Go ahead and click that. The input raster, though, is not going to be the hillshade. Make sure that you make it the clipper. And the data that we're using is in meters. And so you're going to have to determine what the best contour interval is for you. And you might have to change it a little bit as you sort of mess around with it to find out what's good. For a small urban area like this, you might want it to be as small as 2 meters, 3 meters, 4 meters, something like that. In a more mountainous area, that's just going to create too many contour lines, so you might want to make it 20 meters or something like that. I believe that I chose, when I created my contours, 5 meters. I can't remember exactly, but this is what they ended up looking like when I produced them. So once you've created these, you have essentially done the basic raster analysis that you need to do. You've created hill shade, and you've also created the contours, and you are ready next to find a good way to 3D visualize it, but we'll do that on the next video.